In fact, my dad told me, he says, Frankie, he goes, I'm going to give you a list of names. Don't write them down. Remember in your head, you know all these guys already. What would stop them from coming after me and your uncle out of paranoia or anything? Things are getting crazy. Government's getting stronger. Guys are starting to kill each other. If they kill us, eventually they will. I want you to go after each one of these guys and get a vengeance. You know, I'm sitting there saying, man, I'm not going to be lasting too long. I'm just 26 years old. I'm not making it till 30. This is crazy.
This is Inside the Life with Giovanni and Dutch, produced by the Mob Museum, presented by Levy Online and Levy Production Group. Giovanni, Rocco, and Dutch McAlpin are former police and federal task force operatives. They infiltrated drug cartels, outlaw motorcycle groups, and the mafia. Now, they share their stories, along with others who have gone inside the life.
Welcome to Inside the Life. I'm Giovanni Rocco. Today's episode, Dutch and I are joined by Frank Calabrese Jr. Frank Calabrese is a longtime associate and had a career in La Cosa Nostra and was affiliated with the Chicago outfit through his dad, Frank Calabrese Sr. On this episode, Frank, we need probably a mini-series to get through this one, but it's a lifetime of amazing stories, and we'll just jump right in. Tell your life story to us, Frank, how you got involved with the outfit, how you were introduced to it through your family, and we'll try to get through as much as we can in a short period of time.
Great, Giovanni and Dutch. It's great being here with you guys. I was looking forward to this. So in Chicago, you weren't supposed to bring your kids into this life. You were supposed to make a better life for them. I was kind of born into this life because my dad and my uncle were both high-ranking, made members of the Chicago mob. And even on my Irish side, my grandfather, Ed Sticks Hanley, fought against Al Capone in the 20s. He ran with an Irish gang, right, the O'Donnell gang. And then my Uncle Ed was the international president of the Hotel and Restaurant Employees Union for over 30 years, put there by the boss of the Chicago mob, Tony Accardo. So those are my ties. As a young kid in our neighborhood, my friends' fathers were in the life too. We really weren't exposed to it. Right. My dad said, I want to teach you about the street, and you go to school and you learn book smarts. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. The problem was the more my dad taught me, the better I was at it, and he was grooming me. Mm-hmm. I don't believe his intention was to bring me in, plus he wasn't supposed to, but he's seen a lot of him in me, and I was brought along to the point where I eventually bought into it, but I never bought into organized crime. What I bought into was family, my father, my uncle.
What's the neighborhood look like that you grew up in? Like, you're covering your family and everything, but like, I'm not familiar with Chicago and this whole, like, how do these guys dress and how they look? Like, they're gangsters, right? Like, they're mobbed up 100%.
It was a little different in Chicago.
Okay.
As the government was getting stronger, they had a lot of weapons. We went more underground. In fact, a lot of guys from New York I talked to, they kept saying, why aren't we going underground like Chicago? We're out in the open. We weren't out in the open. We dressed to blend.
Yeah.
Okay, we did our business in the middle of the night. People had ideas, knew you were associated, but they really didn't know your business. And that's the way we wanted it. So we didn't have social, they slowly got away from the social clubs on the corners. And like I said, as kids, if we got in any trouble, I wasn't scared of the cops. I was scared what my family would do to me. My uncles, my dad, my mother.
Yeah. Your story resonated with me because a lot of similarities in our life. Of course, I wasn't raised in a crime family, brought into the crime family, but raised around them, raised around the neighborhood, the sense of family, the sense of what my father wanted me to be, what he expected my brother and I to be. You know, he didn't raise us to be, he was a cop, but there was that level of respect in the neighborhood. If the cops didn't take care of it, the mob guys would, and you didn't want that to happen.
Correct. I mean, when my dad was growing up, he grew up in the Patch on Grand Avenue. And if you were tough, you either became a thief, you went into the mob, or you became a copper. Yeah. So there was a mutual respect on the street because a lot of guys grew up together. A lot of guys that were in the life, a lot of coppers grew up together. Yeah. But, you know, one of the things that they were all concerned about that they were on the same team for was the neighborhood. Yeah. The neighborhood being safe.
Right. At the age you're at now, looking back, it was your father's intention to raise a man, because that's how I describe my father as. He raised me to be a man, right? He didn't raise me. He didn't want me to be a criminal. He didn't want me to. He always wanted me to do good, but like all of us, right? Like, you know, he raised me hard. He raised me hard. He raised me fast. So you think that tough love.
Definitely.
You think that's what your father's intentions was?
Very
to make
hard.
sure that you could survive and stand on your own, so you never became a victim to those guys in the mob or the streets.
100%. That was all about him teaching me about the street. And he was extra hard on me because he didn't want me to make the mistakes he did.
Doing the research on you and getting to learn about you, so many similarities, like your Uncle Nick. you talk about your Uncle Nick, and I had somebody in my life like that. My Uncle Pete, he tried to keep me away from the streets. Sometimes the streets they call to you and they drag you and they draw you in. Is that what happened with you? As much as they tried to keep you out, you wanted to be part of what you were seeing, what they were doing?
I really didn't want to be part of it. It just, the circumstances that happened had my father brought me into it more. So my uncle was a soldier. He volunteered during the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
He was a radio operator with top secret clearance on the Bainbridge and Enterprise, always volunteering. When he came into the life, he told me years later, he said it was different back in the 70s. And he told me, I don't want you to go into it because it's changed. Your dad's changed. It's not the same. It's not good anymore.
Right.
He says, and this was right before my first kill.
Right.
And he didn't want me to do it. He actually saved my life and jeopardized his because of it. He says, when I started with your dad in 1970, he says, you know how they're always testing you? I get in the car with a bunch of guys. I think they're testing me. The next thing you know, we're killing a guy and we're burying him. That's it. I'm in. There's
Right.
no out. You have time. Don't cross this line. It's not like it was.
Okay.
So that was a big thing for my uncle. And because we lived in this, I call it the compound, where it was all a bunch of apartments with family, my uncles were like my older brothers.
Yeah.
I was heavy into sports. They were always coming to my sporting events. My dad wasn't much for sports other than boxing.
Right.
I mean, I always talk about this. If you look at me as a young kid in my pictures, I look like Ron Howard, Opie Taylor from Maybe After. I was so shy. I didn't even want to go to birthday parties.
Yeah.
And here I am. This other part of me is coming out. My father's bringing it out. And the problem was I was good at what he showed me to do
Okay.
and what I did. And he's seen that. And
When you were growing up, did he have a normal job or anything like that? Or was he just gangster all the time?
he was gangster all his life. He was gangster all his life. He was street. My father
In
was
and out
one
of
of the
jail a
few
lot?
people. No, he only went to jail one time, and that was going AWOL in the Army because he punched out his commanding officer.
Okay.
One thing about my dad was in this life, there's some guys that are racketeers, and there's some guys that are street guys, do heavy work, physical work, killing, bombing, all that. My dad had a little bit of both. There's a few people in this life that you could come across that had both of those. That's almost a gift. My dad had a good business sense. We were always trying to get in legitimate business, but he couldn't let go of that life. He had a chance and he couldn't. It was in him. Once it was in him, he couldn't let go.
Right.
And that's what bothered me because I wanted him to let go. We're making legitimate money. We're getting ahead in life. You have an excuse. He was sick. You can retire, meaning they shelf you. If they call you, got to come. Very seldom do they. I know there was a scene in The Sopranos where they called somebody back in. But after he was getting better, one day he told me, I figured we were going to do this. We were going to slowly get away. And he says, you know what? I'm going back down to the neighborhood. I'm going to put everybody in line, he goes. And that broke my heart right there. He couldn't let it go. It's an addiction.
Well, it's an addiction.
Pride?
But I believe it's more of an addiction than pride.
Okay.
I mean, it's just,
Power.
it's in you. It's your life.
Well, you committed to it, right? He
Yeah.
committed to it. He believed in it. And whatever side of the law you're on, law enforcement does the same thing. They're committed to it, and they're so driven by it, it's hard for them to let go. Once they're out, they don't want to retire. It's the same situation with him. How was he at home with you? Was he a loving father to you? Was he?
When I was young, yes. So that's why I talk about this. Life changed my dad. But when we were young, he kept the street out of the house. He didn't bring it in the house like you were supposed to. He had a huge heart. And that slowly faded out. And a lot had to do with his boss, treacherous killer, sociopath. And my dad slowly became like him. And he started bringing it in the house. But when we were young, and we had rules, when we were at the table, we had to set the table as boys. We had to clear the table, turn the TV off. We eat at 5 o'clock. He made sure he was home. Don't eat the last piece of food.
That's right.
That means we didn't make enough.
That's right.
Okay, let anybody else have, but do not touch it. I don't care how hungry you are. Don't be smart with somebody older than you. Respect was huge as far as not respecting who was the boss in the life, but respecting the people in the neighborhood, the working people, the nice people. Don't make it personal with law enforcement. Okay, don't make them want to go home, and all they're going to do is talk about locking you up. You want him to say that Calabrese ain't a bad guy. Too bad he chose the wrong way of life. So it was all a mind game, but it was stuff that we grew up around. And I still follow a lot of that to this day.
And everybody knew growing up that your dad was in the life.
They did, but they didn't know to what extent. Even my ex-wife, my mother, a lot of people didn't know. They just thought we were one of the biggest crews for putting money on the street, loan sharking. We called it juice in Chicago. They called it vig in New York. Close to $1 million on the street almost all the time.
Right.
So people thought we did that and some sports booking.
Okay.
They had no idea.
Sports booking back then was calling in the numbers. And did you do the lotteries? Did you do the numbers racket?
Yeah.
Where you played the pick 3, the pick 4?
Oh no, we did not do that. No, we didn't do that. Well, we did the
Sports
cards,
betting. Yeah. The cards, the tickets.
Yeah.
You would fill out every Sunday. You'd fill out the tickets, collect the tickets.
Correct.
Much different than online gambling. So you had runners. Right?
Yeah.
So we called them runners in New York, New Jersey. So were you a runner?
Well, we called them agents.
Oh yeah, agents. Agents were the guys that took the bets.
Yeah.
How did you start out? Did you start out as a runner, or did you go right to be an agent with your own book?
I was right in the office with my uncles.
Okay.
And so on Mondays, we'd take everything in and go
Tally
over it all. And we found out that we were chasing so many guys because they'd hold players to the side. My dad decided, I'm just going to charge everybody a tax. I don't care what you make. I don't care what you don't make. You're paying. And on average, I think it was $1,000 a week you had to pay year round.
Okay.
You know, I had 8, 10, 12 guys like that. So it became more of a, we were going in different directions. So booking became a little less important.
How's the
on our
loan
list.
sharking work? What would you loan people money for? Just for betting or booking? Or?
No, we would loan money out to a lot of businessmen back then, guys that were successful that needed 10, 20, 30,000 right away for the business. Because if you go to the bank, it takes time. And like a lot of them, my dad charged them 2.5%, nothing big, $25 for every 1,000. And then we would get people that just needed money. We'd get collateral. Car titles, keys. Yeah, and we'd find out how much you made. We'd find out if you're married, how many kids you have. My father's intention was never to bury anybody, because the first thing happens when you bury somebody and they go home and they ain't got money for the wife and kids, the wife calls the FBI and you're out of it.
Right.
So his thing was to always try to work with people. So if I borrowed you a couple $1,000s, let's say I borrowed you $2,000 and you couldn't pay.
Yeah.
I was charging you $50 a week on it and you couldn't pay. What I would do is make it $4,000 and then it's all principal. And you pay me what you can every week. As long as you're paying me every week, if you were a gambler and I find out you're gambling somewhere, you're going to have a problem. As long as you're trying to make it right, we're going to try to make it work with you.
Yeah.
You know,
Because you want them to come back.
Try to go to a bank and do that.
Right.
You know, people think, oh, a guy didn't pay, we're going to go bust his legs. No, there were guys that didn't pay, but that was one of the last resorts was violence.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times the first thing you got was a crack, an open hand crack to the side of the head, so they go down, and you were given a warning.
Right.
And most of the time that was enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of guys on the other side of the coin, a lot of it was gentleman loans, right? A lot of helping out the neighborhoods, and that's what they did. But then you had the other side that was, it was their intention to bury you. It was their intention
Get
to
in
make
your
you dig a
business,
hole.
take everything.
But then you had to pay the VIG on top. The VIG was so, it was astronomical, and you couldn't get that VIG. You would bury yourself. So then,
And
it
then
was
those
guaranteed
guys, they
money.
would just take their business.
Yeah,
that?
Whatever.
Eventually,
That's how they just collapsed the business. They
Yeah,
take-
and you see it all the time in the movies,
Yeah.
but it's true. So a few things that I didn't agree with organized crime was extortion. When all the bosses were going away for this Vegas skimming, Operation Strawman, they were out extorting everybody. Every business extorting $200,000-$300,000. It was unheard of, and I wasn't real comfortable with that. And one time years ago, when you had a business in the neighborhood, you paid the ward politicians, you paid the beat cops, and you paid the mob. But usually you got something for it. Your place was safe.
Yeah.
If you stayed open a little later, if you needed a permit to build an outdoor patio. But it changed over time. Now you're just paying so that
Just paying so we don't tear your stuff up, basically.
you're paying us to protect you from us.
Sure.
Yeah.
And your dad came up in that era of when the outfit was probably at its craziest, and just, he came up with those old timers, right?
He did.
He was around guys that were at the Appalachian meetings, right?
Yeah. He was around a lot of people. He was coming up. He would have rose a lot faster, but he was too violent, and they were trying to get away from violence a little. And he had a couple of situations where he almost lost his life, but some of the bosses vouched for him and told him, Frank, you got to cut this out. The only violence is what we approve, not in the bar because there's some guy you don't like. My dad was good with his hands, but he had a problem with his temper.
Okay. And just a little bit more on your dad and your relationship with him. When you got into the life and you started doing low things like, the racket and the sports and stuff, he approved of it? He let you come in?
Yeah,
Or
he was the one that was bringing me in.
But was he just leave it at this?
There were points that he did at times, but then it would change.
Yeah.
When he needed me, he'll bring me no matter where.
Yeah.
And so at first it was doing book work, passing a few messages, taking rides with him teaching me about the street, grooming me a little bit. But the more I did for him and the more he's seen, then it started to go into planning and assisting in murders, violence.
Yeah.
It just was a whole different thing. This is going to be my life now.
Right.
He goes, you're going to lead 2 lives. You're going to be my secret weapon.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, I'm not supposed to bring you in.
Yeah.
And, I was his right-hand man. Him and my uncle were close. My uncle, you tell my uncle to walk over across the room and shoot that guy in the head, he won't think twice. But if there's something where he has to improvise during that, he gets messed up. And he was too nice a lot of times to guys on the street. And guys took advantage of him.
Right.
Guys didn't have the money, my uncle put it in.
Yeah.
Then when my father found out, go talk to the guy would throw my uncle under the bus. Whoa, he helped you.
Right.
That would get me mad.
How's come the outfit felt so confident? Like, you're talking about murder, like it's a daily chore, like it just happens all the time. Was there some lack of like oversight, or like was the outfit that powerful, or like what was kind of the dynamic?
We had ties to presidents. There was a lot of power. Unions were big. My belief is that they were getting so powerful that the government got a little concerned about it. So yeah, there was that power. And when I talk about murder, if I'm talking about it nonchalantly, it's because this was my life.
Sure.
I didn't know a different. I lived a little bit of both lives, but as I got older, who second guessed their dad?
Right.
When I had such a great relationship and idolized him as a kid. My life was perfect. He never spoiled us.
Mm-hmm.
We never got a new car. My first car was 12 years old. It was a $500 car, but oh my God, I was so happy.
Right.
Everything he gave us, we earned. And he taught us a lot. There was a good man there that I idolized. I never thought he was going to lead me down a different path. I felt that, hey, you know what? My family here, we got to protect ourselves. There's a lot of people out there that, can hurt you.
Yeah.
Sure.
And we need to protect ourselves. We need to stick together. So what my dad says goes, My dad says, come on, follow me through the gates of hell. I'm going.
Right.
Because it's my dad.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So when I started to see these changes, it was screwing with my head.
A lot of guys back then were sociopaths, right? To an extent. It sounds like he had some kind of trigger in him, whether it's bipolar or a sociopath or just that criminal element, the ability to disregard a human life. That's a different human being. And having grown up in that neighborhood, and we were told, like my dad was law enforcement, but in the neighborhood, we grew up around hitmen. I worked in restaurants around guys that were serious guys, and you were told, no, stay away from this guy. He just got out, or he just killed a guy, he just clipped somebody. When you're growing up in a neighborhood, or so-and-so went missing. So, I went to school one day and his father killed his mother, or somebody got whacked out in a neighborhood. Yeah, he's not going to be back around again. Everybody knew he was dead.
Yeah.
But you're living that as a child, learning this.
And when everybody went away, it was never always in prison. He's at college.
He's at college.
That was college.
He's at college.
Uncle,
He's
this
away
guy, that
working.
guy, everybody's
Yeah.
at college. Yeah. And it was part of the life that either you were going to die one day or wind up in prison. That was a gimme. Very few people when you got into it.
Yeah. And the treachery that I saw growing up, and then my time inside the mafia when I infiltrated him as an undercover was just, I saw the treachery and the backstabbing, because the guys I was around, my capo, he was an older guy. He was in his 70s by the time I was reporting to him. And it sounds very much like your father. He used to say to me, he was grooming me, right? We share that similarity where he would say, you making good money, huh? Yeah, making pretty good money. Yeah, you nice clothes, nice shoes, your buddy Dutch, and you're going out in the town out here in Vegas. Yeah. And then it would be a slow roll.
Yeah.
Good.
There was a reason
you got
behind
extra
everything
money,
he
yeah.
was doing, everything
And it was
he was
always
saying.
a slow roll.
Where's mine?
Right.
They don't just come to you
No.
with a handbook and an employee
No.
app and say, here, did you ever think about joining the mob? Why do you want to
Right.
go to college? No.
Yeah.
They want to test you. They could see it in your eyes. They can see it in your mannerisms. Some of those old timers know exactly how far they're going to get with you.
Yeah.
And if they're not sure, they're going to test you. They're my father's boss. We would go to a Christmas party or something. He'd walk over, hey, Cheech.
Yeah.
Tell you don't come over and say hi to me. I go, Unc, I was on my way. I says, I'm helping the ladies over here for a moment.
Right.
The wives, the mothers, whatever I was doing. He just look at me like, okay. I noticed that he had this thing for me too. So maybe he's seen what my father's seen. I don't know.
Right. Did that cause you any heartache in the street? Because number one, because it was your dad, right? he's senior. The other guys in the outfit, were they looking at you like, you're special, you get this because of your father, or there's
No,
some
they
kind of
actually looked
jealousy?
the opposite. They felt bad how hard my father was on me and my brother.
Yeah. And I asked because a lot of the guys, when I was around the made guys, they would ask me, what was I doing with my capo? They were all afraid of him. He was a madman. He used to tell me I used to kill more people by accident, Giovanni. What do you say to a guy that says that to you? Like your dad. It's
just try to keep my mouth shut and listen.
You did.
And I know there's a reason why he's saying this, and I'm trying to figure it out. What's he? And that's
doing?
what I was taught too. I'm trying to figure out what's behind your words.
Yeah, I had
or your
serious
actions.
guys. Yeah, and I had serious guys while I was in what they portray in The Sopranos, the pork store. And the day I was in the pork store, I had made guys going, and they grew up with this guy. They're also in his 70s. Giovanni, what are you doing with him? He's a complete. He went on a phone. He stepped outside to take a phone call, and they all said to me, "What are you doing with him? He's a psychopath. He's crazy. He's going to wind up killing somebody in front of you. He's absolutely out of his mind. No, he's a good guy. What am I going to say to that? And then he would come in. He would overhear it, and then because I vouched for him and say, "No, he's a good guy. Listen, we get along." He loved it. That was the father-son relationship.
And sometimes one of those guys that was telling you that was told to tell you that.
Right. As a test. See what he says.
Yeah,
see if he
everything's
talks
a
bad.
test. Everything's
we
a
can
test.
go on and on about it. And the walk and talks. And I got thrown under the bus. Yeah. My FBI cover team got burned one day. And, the guy found out. They followed him back to the FBI building, the guy that I was meeting. And then he did a walk and talk with my captain. And I was like, well, what is he doing? Is he telling Charlie? Charlie was my captain. Is he telling Charlie about the FBI guy? So, everything is, you're walking on eggshells in that world.
Yeah, it's. I mean, we could talk for days about a grooming process, about how to learn. Also with law enforcement, and we knew who was FBI. Right. We knew the prosecutors, who were the lifelong prosecutors, who were the guys just trying to take a stepping stone to the next level. At the same time, we're always trying to find out, who we can manipulate, whose pocket we can get into. Do they have any vices? Do they have any weaknesses? Can we get information from them?
Right.
Anything. They're trying to form and you guys are trying to form a relationship with us, and we're also trying to form a relationship with you. So everything that's coming out of your mouth is calculated, and the same thing. So we can have a conversation, and the whole thing sounds like just this nice conversation, but in reality, we're testing each other.
We're working each other.
Yeah, we're working each other. That's a better word. Working each other.
Prime example of that, Whitey Bulger, how we used John Connolly, the FBI agent. Perfect example of that. Used
exactly.
him, just, and again, it happened all the time.
And these guys are likable.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not talking about, the FBI, but I'm talking about they're manipulators.
Oh, yeah.
If my father was sitting in this room right now, you guys would love him.
We'd want to hang out with him, wouldn't we?
Yeah. But if you seen the other side of him, if you dealt with him on the street, whole different person.
Yeah. Or if they were in business. I remember when I was a little kid, all my friends were their dads were made guys, and we were on our bicycles driving up the boulevard, and I go right past this guy. He's a made guy in the Genovese family, and every day he owned a gas station. And you stop and get the old quarter drinks, the plastic drinks with the little tin cap, and he used to get a quarter drink. And we drive by and we stop to get air in the tire, and he starts screaming at us, "What the F are you doing this? Get out of here. You see I'm talking? Every day I'm here." And then he chases us away. 2 hours later, we're coming back. He starts yelling at you for not stopping again.
Yeah.
It was like this. You were in this abusive relationship with these guys. And you had to walk on. What was your biggest earner, your biggest scam? What did you have going?
I had a lot of little scams, nothing real big. One of them was powder cocaine. Okay, even though it was a big no-no in the mob in Chicago, a lot of guys started to get into it because of the money. I seen a friend of mine making money. I couldn't believe it. Knowing it was a death sentence, if my dad and my uncle found out, I opened up my own, kept it small. Problem was, started getting high on my own supply, partying on the weekends. It turned into a problem. I've been clean since 1997. It's the most embarrassing thing I ever did. But there was everyday scams. Late 80s to early 90s, we had this scam where we were paying the post office guy at the airport when the credit cards would come in. We'd give him $100 for every envelope. And then we turn around and sell the card for $500.
Okay.
To guys going out there and spending them. And that was and that turned into something good for a while. And then at one point I just said, okay, enough. Too many people are getting involved. It's getting too big. Nothing good never runs forever. Out here in Vegas in the early 90s, also when the mob was mostly gone, especially Chicago, stuff from here. I had this scam going where I had all the pit bosses in a few different hotels. And so if you guys wanted to come out for the weekend, it's $100 a day for the room. I don't care how many people you have in the room, 4, 2, 1, and it includes all your room, food, and beverage. Now, the way the system worked out here is I put a friend of mine that was squeaky clean as a casino host. So we get paid on what you're gambling, how long you're gambling per hand, whether you lose or win.
Okay.
And then I take that $100 per room, and I would split it. I'd come out here once every couple of weeks and split it with one pit boss that would filter it out to the others. We had 40, 50 rooms on some weekends. Wow. Yeah, it was unbelievable.
So you were making money off of what they were gambling too? Not just $100 a room. That wasn't that big a deal. It was, you wanted to bring big gamblers out here.
I would bring, there were some too, but we didn't get paid off of what you won or lost. We got paid off of how long you gambled, how much you gambled per hand, and what you played.
Wow. Who would pay you?
The hotel, the casino.
Okay.
It would pay, not me.
Right.
It would pay my friend that's squeaky clean that had the card.
Gotcha.
So now what the pit bosses were doing is I would tell you, whatever you guys do, don't give your name at the table when you play. So if you're not gamblers and you're by the pool all day, I'm showing you playing 5 hours to the pit bosses. That was before computers. So they'd write it in on the boards. And it was, I would imagine they were doing this for years. I got in it on the end.
Yeah.
Then when I got indicted, I didn't want to get anybody in trouble. So I closed down. They wouldn't meet my friend. You know, he didn't get cleared. Right. So it was so we're a lot of different scams.
You were out here representing your family and representing your father, but did they have
No, I was not at that point.
No?
No, I was on my own.
So you're out here on your own.
Yeah.
So what happened out here?
So most people that were going through my buddy.
Okay.
You know, it was a funny story too, because my buddy now all of a sudden became the big guy in Chicago to go to Vegas. And I told him, I said, be careful. These guys are going to invite you to every wedding. They're going to buy you drinks when you walk in. I said, but the second you lose that spot, they're going to turn your backs on you. He's like, okay. Once I closed it down, he goes, you were right. I go, you didn't believe me? He goes, no.
Right.
I go, that's how it
invited
is.
no more.
That's how it is.
Now, the drugs, eventually, you took a pinch for that?
No.
You didn't? You never got pinched?
No. When we got indicted in 95, our family got indicted for an old case that my father got involved in. I said, this guy's no good, Dad. Don't be around him. My dad was changing, and I wanted out. I had kids. I had a family, and I didn't want to do this no more. This ain't the dad I know. This is not what it's about. Started avoiding my dad, and he set me up one day. He got me in a garage. He put a gun in my face, and he told me, if you can't listen to me, I'd rather have you dead than disobey me. At that point, I don't know how I got out of that
You're grown up
garage.
at this time?
Yeah, I got a family. Okay, and things were getting real bad between me and my dad. You know, I was carrying a gun every day in my pocket, 38 snub nose. And it was the gun I took that my dad put in my face because I said, if he ever tries to do it again,
Really?
I'm going to kill him with the gun. He didn't do it. And my dad was the kind of guy that always said, don't pull a gun on somebody and not use it. The second it comes out, you use it. And I don't know how I got out of the garage that night, but all I thought is he's going to kill me, bury me somewhere. He didn't know about the drugs at the time, and my kids are going to wonder what happened to their dad. I got out of that garage. I don't know how I did.
Just you and him in there?
Just me and him. And, you know, when I walked in the garage and I heard that door close and I turned around, he got me by the neck. He got a gun in my face. I always thought I was too smart to be set up.
Yep.
They always say somebody close. Who closer than my dad? Who did I trust?
As soon as you heard the door click.
He just felt that he knew I was doing a lot of different things, and I was trying to do legitimate stuff too. I got in the restaurant business. He's trying to control that. Everything I did, he's trying to control. And he's getting mad because I don't want to be with him anymore. I don't want to do this with him anymore. And he's getting mad. We got indicted in 1995 on an old case. And you know, unconditional love, I thought maybe this is going to change. You know,
Right.
Oh, him getting locked up might slow him down and make him.
yeah, all of us are getting locked up.
Yeah.
I pled out, but for the drugs, I found out that there was a drug and alcohol program. I partied, called my pre-sentencing officer and said, I have a powder cocaine problem. I want to get this program. I went in, I peed dirty, and she said, all right, we're going to set up a court date. Are you going to be okay? I says, yeah, but I really want to get this program. I want help. It wasn't as bad as I made it, but there's nothing good with drugs. The FBI says Calabrese's don't deal with drugs, so they're going to give you a 30-day outpatient. You can't have that program, and then you go into prison. So I avoided her.
Really?
Yeah, I says, okay, if the marshals come out and arrest me, they put me in prison, they got to give me the program by law. So that's what I did. Do you know why I'm hiding in plain sight? Who do you think comes and finds me? My dad. She called my dad. Instead of calling the marshals, she called my dad. And he's going to be
under
good
indictment
dad.
too?
Yeah. He's going to be good dad. She don't have any idea. When he comes and sees me, that's when I came clean with him. You know, it was the first time my dad ever had tears in his eyes. And I says, look, now my dad's thinking that I'm not calling her because I don't want to do my time. He's thinking that paranoia that they think, oh, he's going to tell on me. He's
no
going to turn
good.
on me.
He's no good.
So we were outside for 3 hours that night, and I told him, I said, Dad, I'm ready to do my time. I said, I'm just trying to get a little shorter so I can get home to my family. So we made some promises to each other. He goes, I can't believe, I said, Dad, a lot of guys were selling and doing around you that you didn't know. And I says, yeah, it's my mistake, but I got to live with it. I'm going to do the right thing. He made me promise him that I would never do drugs again, and I kept that to this day. That promise, I'll always keep him. And I made him promise me when I got out, no matter how much you need me, I just want to be a family man. I have restaurants. I want to work legitimately. I'd rather drive a tractor trailer all day for construction than do what you're doing. I got what's my legacy going to be for my kids here?
Right.
And he said, I'll never try to bring you back in.
Really?
Yeah, until we got in prison. And he seen how good I was doing my time.
And what were you doing in prison?
Was he jealous of you?
He did get jealous of me.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I went in first, I went to MCC, and he told a guy that was part of our crew. So everybody pled out. My dad got 12, my uncle got 7, I got 5, my brother got 2. All the other guys got 2, 3 years. One guy decides to fight it. He's looking at 2, 3 years. He fights it. He loses. He gets 10 years. So he's in MCC in Chicago, Metropolitan Correctional, and I come in, and I didn't know this. He told me this after about a month and a half in. He goes, your dad told me to watch you. I go, what? He goes, we wanted me to watch you to see if you were okay in here. He's concerned. I was like, oh, okay. He goes, I go, and what did you tell him? He goes, I told him your son's doing better time than me. You don't have to watch him. I wound up 2 weeks in Terre Haute Penitentiary because of traveling and all that. You know, it's time that you're locked down 24/7.
Yeah.
You know, I dug down deep inside. What am I made of? What am I going to do when I got? What am I going to do for my family? I feared my dad. The only man in life that I ever feared was my dad. I respect what other guys are capable of, but I feared him. I lost that fear in there. I says, I'm going to go. And that's it. And my dad knew. I wound up in the same prison as him. I could not believe it. I thought I needed prison at the time. I needed to change my life, get back on track, get healthy. And I'm like, if I'm away from my dad, by the time we get back out, life is going to move on, and I could do it, you know.
Right.
Go legit.
So you say he saw that you were doing better time than him. Did you have something going on inside, or is it just the way you were getting along with everybody? That
No, I did. I've always been a hustler.
Yeah.
I think what saved me to this day is I've always been in businesses, always looking to work.
Yeah.
So I get in prison, I get in the commissary. Good job to have in prison. I'm running the commissary after a while. So there's all these guys in there,
Yeah.
and I'm taking care of them all.
Yeah.
And the guys are telling my dad, hey, you know, your son, he's a real stand-up guy. He's doing good time, and, you know, he takes care of us. He looks after us. He shows respect. You should be proud.
Yeah.
My son, that's me. I show him all that. And when I found that out, that really, really bothered me. And I don't fear him anymore. So I started calling him out on everything.
It's the cub becoming a lion.
Yeah. And you know, and I am him, but not him in that sociopathic where, you know, I had lines. I was wrong. And I'm like, you know, I got to do something here.
Yeah.
And then I just read the other day, because I have all my dad's personal belongings, files, 302s, all that stuff.
A 302 is like, I could write a 302 and it's my version. It's correct. It's true. He can write his own 302. It's correct and it's true. But nonetheless, it's a documentation.
It is.
It's a recognized document. And how you got your hands on a 302 at all would be.
Well, when I was the oldest, when my father passed, I got everything.
Okay.
So they
He
gave
got
it
it
to
from
me.
his attorney and stuff, probably,
No,
right?
attorney
Oh.
can't give it to me. I got it from the government.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
Oh, because he was dead.
I think they might have accidentally left a couple cases,
Right.
but I have them. So
Right.
because I have them, they're mine legally now because they gave them to me. And I read he was kind of writing a book, and then he was writing notes in a journal. He was being nice to me when we were pleading out because he was going to take care of me after. So I was right what I was thinking. He was going to take care of me. Not take care of me, make life better.
Right.
He was going to get rid of me
He
because
was
he
gonna
couldn't
just-
control me.
Yep. He's going to dispose
Like kill
of
you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
take care of you. Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't do it the first time. He had a lot of time
Yeah,
to think
in the
about
garage.
it. You know, that night when we were driving in the car afterwards, I could see him mad that he didn't do it. It wasn't my father. It was other character. I don't know if it was something above. I don't know what it was. But while we're driving, he's backhanding me to the face. Driving, I could see he's mad he didn't finish the job. And I'm sitting there. I didn't put my hands up. I just sat there, took that beating. It didn't hurt. You know what hurt? Here. This
Yeah,
is
I'm
my
sure.
dad. This is what it's come down to.
Yeah.
I have a full-fledged war between me and the man I idolize, and it's not the man I knew anymore.
Right.
I got to do something. What am I going to do? You know, wait till we get home? And the only other thing I could think of was talk to the enemy, the FBI.
Yeah.
But could they be better than my dad? Worse? There's good and bad and everything. I know that. Okay, there's nothing where it's all good.
Right.
All right.
Without a doubt.
Only in the fairy tale movies. So I decided to form a business relationship with the FBI. So I went to the prison library. I wore winter gloves so there's no fingerprints. I typed the letter so there's no handwriting, and I put nothing personal in the letter. In case it got intercepted, I could say, look, Dad, they're trying to set us up. They know that we're bumping heads. So this was all planned out. I was down almost 13 months by the time I wrote this letter.
And how long were
8
you-
months with my dad.
What was your sentence?
My sentence was 5 years, 57 months.
So you were already over a year into it.
Yeah. The time, look, I never suffered a day in jail.
Yeah.
If you are street and you go into prison, you're not going to suffer.
Right.
Okay. You know how to act. You know how to survive. So I sent this letter out, and about a month or so later, I go, and there's the FBI sitting up there. So at first, I says, look, I want to help you. I don't want no time off, no immunity. I'll pay all my fines, but I'm only helping you against my dad.
Yeah.
They were kind of taken by it. First of all, because in the letter I told them, you can't get a hold of my attorney or anybody or I'm dead. I'm alone, my safety.
Right.
I don't want anybody to know, just you guys. And they said, will you wear a wire? I said, no, my dad's too smart for that. Twice on the street, he got people right away. He was really good at, if you said one word out of line or anything, he'd detect right away.
Yeah.
We'd look into it, and he was right. So I says, no, I'm just going to dry beef. Point you in the right direction. They leave. They come back a week or two later, and I says, you know what I thought about it? I says, I need to wear a wire on my dad because I need him in his own words. He's such a master manipulator. He'll get out of this. So they worked with me, and they let me lead on everything. And we formed a good relationship. Because you got to remember, first thing they did was send in 2 guys that just came from the academy, and I'm thinking, they're not taking this serious.
Yeah.
They're not I'm dead. I'm thinking I'm dead.
Right.
You know, and later on, they wound up being lead agents on the case and did unbelievable work. Okay, but it's just my first mindset is, they're walking in the room. I got to trust them with my life. They got to trust me, and now we got to do this in a prison office like that.
Right.
It just doesn't happen in my life. You know.
Someone's going to notice that.
But the thing was, I had to get my dad to talk, and he's very good. So what I wanted him to do was, I wanted him to think I wanted back in, because he wanted me back in. He knew I was divorced with my wife now, and he wanted me back into life. So I went and seen him one day without the wire, and I says, Dad, I said, look, I thought about it. I want back in with you when I get out now. I've made my mind up, but we got some issues. If we don't straighten out these issues, you're dead to me.
Brilliant.
And I says, if you want to talk, let me know where and when you pick. Always let him pick. And I never pushed him on anything, never tried to force anything. It was called a wish list. They'd give it to me, I'd memorize it, and I'd go out. My ideas for the wires were, there were little radio sets with headphones that everybody wore in the prison around their neck. I said, what better, if I can hear you talking, to put the speakers in there. This thing, I didn't have control to turn it on and off. They turned it on, because that was a big thing in the past. That's one of the things I brought up too. Is in our case, the guy turned it on and off. That's that's not good.
No, that's not.
So they turned it on, and I left. I was gone for either an hour, 5 hours. The hardest part was getting to and from the office. I wouldn't know if somebody seen me until I'm dead on the yard. They couldn't monitor me in prison because of the concrete walls. I'm on my own. They just sat there. They did whatever they did at the time, and they waited for me. It was either I came back or the prison alarm went off.
And they're bringing these FBI guys into the prison.
But I asked them to dress a certain way, kind of, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, don't wear the suits with the wingtip shoes and, you know.
But some of the COs probably
COs
knew what was going on, didn't they?
Yeah.
No. The only guy that knew, SIS, that's it.
Okay.
It says he was the only guy, and he was I don't know if it was CIA, government, they trusted him. He was the only one that knew, and the warden. That was it.
Really?
The one guard that he sent the message to, he trusted. Okay, that guy was ex-military too. So he said something to me, never said nothing again. It was just that one time, go see him. And when he told me that, I thought, okay, it's yeah. I said, oh man, what did I do now? Somebody snitch on me or something? You know, so I left. He probably already knew why I was being called, who knows. But no, nobody, I needed, if anybody found out, I'm dead.
Oh, yeah.
I got no help in the yard. Not with guards, not with.
They'd be lined up to do you.
Yeah, exactly.
They would.
Exactly.
So they'd come in every time they wanted to make a recording. They'd fit you out with this recorder and push record, and then
Yeah,
Turn
they
you
actually
loose?
they couldn't push record. They had to use a little pin needle and
Oh,
something
yeah.
so that I couldn't turn it off. They didn't know me at first. As we went along, down the line, I had a little more liberties, and they listened to me a little more because I knew my father better than anybody.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Even my Uncle Nick, when he wound up cooperating, he said I could have never did what my nephew did. I could have never accomplished it. My brother would have caught on to me immediately. So, when I went out there, I told my dad I wanted back in. I said, I have these issues, and I used a murder. I said, you killed an innocent woman. I thought you guys don't do that. Who told you that? Well, I learned anger and liquor get people to talk, right?
Yeah.
So my dad had a problem with anger.
Yeah.
We don't, even though you can get hooch, we don't drink in prison. And so I pit my dad against my uncle because my uncle was bad mouthing my dad because my dad was telling people he was taking care of the crew and he wasn't for the lawyers and stuff. So I said, well, Uncle Nick said, Uncle Nick, he thought my uncle was trying to be my dad. He went berserk.
Oh, yeah.
So bad that he put a hit out on my Uncle Nick in another prison saying he might not be able to stand up to stuff. He told guys that my uncle killed with. Now, Giovanni, in the life, if a guy comes to us and says, my brother looks like he's Mike Tell, and we've killed a bunch of guys with him, and we got a chance to kill him, we ain't going to think twice.
Yeah, kill him for sure.
He's gone.
His brother just gave the okay.
Yeah.
Well, they blotched it, and my uncle
They
wound
did
up-
try to kill him though.
Yeah. What had happened was there was a guy from Cicero that had a 10-year drug sentence, and they were in the process of smuggling in a gun through a guard that they had at a high security. The guy told his cellmate, who he thought was close with, his cellmate drops a letter to the warden, and they lock everybody down. My uncle shipped off, then my uncle started cooperating. I just opened the doors. I was just going against my dad. When they tried to do that to my uncle, that was a fatal
Game changer.
mistake.
Yeah.
He took down the last of what was the Chicago outfit.
Right.
Okay, from all the way from the early 1900s, there was 1,112 gangland slaves with only 14 convictions. In this case alone, 18 convictions and close to 30-something south. And they were murders like Richard Kane, Sam Giancana. I mean, my uncle just had a wealth of knowledge. And people were in shock. Even my ex-wife, my mother, they're like, we had murders at the dip. That was not the dad. That was not the husband I knew, Frankie. My mom says, in your book on the cover, look at your dad's eyes. He says he had no soul anymore. That was not the man I knew. And you look and you get to see they're black.
Do you think your Uncle Nick turned because of what your dad tried to kill him, and he saw the changes in your dad too?
He actually,
Like 10
yes.
years previous, would he have ever
Yes,
turned?
he did. So he tried to kill my uncle on the street. So a guy that was in our crew, this guy Ronnie Jarrett, that killed a lot of guys with my dad, his partner. My dad has me go see my uncle to get him to come somewhere. Well, I went right in the house. I says, hey, they're going to try to get rid of you.
Yeah.
I says, I'm telling you, you repeat it. I says, I'm dead too. But they're out there. They want me to bring you somewhere because they know you trust me. He says, I ain't going. I said, good.
Right.
I says, I have to repeat that you ain't going. He says, I know. Go ahead. And as my dad, he lost that line.
Yeah.
He remarried, and the father was an ex-police chief from an Italian neighborhood, Melrose Park, right? My dad's wife is under control of her dad. Well, that's the words my dad used, meaning she loves her father. They're close,
Yeah.
right? Well, my dad thinks control. We walk in the garage one day. In his garage, he goes, yeah, that looks good. I go, what? Because it looks like we're going to have to get rid of my father-in-law. Oh, why? What did he do? He controls my wife too much. And wow.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm thinking he's going to have me kill him. And then he's going to kill me right there and make up some excuse. I knew how my dad was thinking now. Why would you do this? There was no line no more.
Just kill anybody.
So my uncle, the union boss, Irish and Italians butt heads a lot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So my uncle, the union boss, was out drinking one night. Tony Accardo, Joe Iuppa hear about that. So Joey Iuppa, who was the underboss at the time, or even the boss, he has my uncle meet him at the Russian baths. And what he's doing in there is he's berating my uncle any way he could so my uncle disrespects him.
Yeah.
But my uncle was a smart man. He was just like, hey, I'm sorry, whatever. My dad's sitting outside with his boss. If Joey comes out and gives the signal, my uncle's
kill you.
dead.
Right.
I says, and Dad, you're going to do that? He says, I was going to call him and tell him that your mother is ill. I'm going to come and pick him up and take him there. And I just thought, wow, you're going to implicate my mother your brother-in-law who wanted to help you. He wanted him to come out here, my dad, and run the union out here. But my dad was scared to leave the mob because he thought with his boss might have killed him or get in the pocket, and it would have been worse.
Since he's going so psychopath now, like, is the rest of the outfit, is the rest of the members of the family starting to see that in him too and being like, well, we got to do something about him? Or are they just kind of let him run? Or are they scared of him?
They were all scared of him, yeah. Even when we were in prison, guys would come to me every day. Guys in the life, hey, you got to talk to your father. About what? Well, he's doing this, he's doing that. I said, why do I got to talk to him about it? You talk to him. I'm not saying nothing to him. His own lawyer would say that. You got to talk to my dad. I says, you talk to him. You're the lawyer. Don't tell me to tell him, because they knew I was the only one that would confront him at that point.
Now, when you confronted him about the woman on the tape, when you challenged him, what did he say? Did he just...
He said that he was in a lookout car and that the woman wasn't innocent, and sometimes, that happens. It's collateral damage, he said. When he was happy that I wanted back in, he says, you're going to take over the crew with Ronnie till I get home. Because remember, I'm doing 5, he's doing 12.
Yeah.
So, but this time you're going to earn it. He gives me the name right on tape of the first guy he wants me to kill the second I get out. He for 2 reasons. One, he wanted the guy who I told him this guy was no good for years, but he never listened to me. Now he sees it. And second of all, because he wants to lock me in this time.
Yeah.
Once
Control.
I'm in.
Once you're on a murder, then you can't.
Then I'm in.
Then he's got
Was this the
complete
guy
control.
that got you guys indicted? Is that who you wanted to kill?
No, it was just a guy. It was just a little two-faced guy that was running a little rogue, and always kissed my dad's rear. And I said, always be careful of the Greeks bearing gifts. And he was out there, and I caught him doing a lot of stuff he wasn't supposed to do. And then he tried to set me up with my dad one time, saying I was running around using my dad's name. I said, Dad, all your life, have you ever had anybody say that? No. I says. He goes, but I'm bringing the guy. I go, he ain't going to show up. No, he's going to show up. He told me he'll be here.
Wow.
I says, okay, and he's bringing the guy that said I said this, right? I says, okay. So this guy comes. We used to call him a curly. This guy comes, and I said, Dad, when he comes, I'm punching the shit out of him right in front of you. You better not do that. I go, Dad, if I'm not your son,
You have to.
I can get hurt here. I go, and I'm telling you, the other guy ain't coming. Guy didn't show up. I told my dad. And he just looked at me the whole time. You raise your hands, we got a problem.
Really?
And at that point, I was drifting farther away from my dad all the time.
It's interesting. Your dad wants to kill his father-in-law for being too controlling of his wife, but he demands control over you.
Yeah. So I invested in this business, and the family that I was going with, I wanted to get them out because the kid was a degenerate gambler, spending everything, and they're crying to my dad that, Frankie this, Frankie that, all stuff that didn't really pertain to it. So we do this sit down at a restaurant. My dad, I got list of everything I put out. My dad sides with them.
Huh.
I walk outside. I go, you got to be kidding me.
All right.
I mean, we were face to face. And again, at that point, I still feared my dad.
Yeah.
But it got to the point where you were talking earlier about people knew. My dad treated me worse than he would treat any of you guys.
Yeah. Yep. They expected more. He expected more out of you. That's why.
And then he knew he would shit on me because he knew he could. He knew my loyalty. But he did expect more a lot.
For those watching and listening, with the sit-downs don't always end because, you're old man. You go to whoever's sponsoring you in the sit-down, you're not guaranteed to come out on a winning side.
No.
You don't know how it's going to come.
No.
And again, having experienced it, I experienced it when I was in. Me and another guy caused a sit-down in our family, and the bosses went, and everybody has to go out of their way. And if it's because of you in a sit-down, you don't know. If you don't come out on a good side of that, And I remember sitting for hours in a hotel room sweating. I was with my capo's wife and a couple of guys from the family and other guys from another family in the Gambinos, and just sitting there waiting. And then he came in, shirt to the side, exhausted. I just ran a marathon. And you know what the thing was? Points right in your face. And you're like, how is this going to end?
Yeah, exactly. How is it going to...
What did I do?
If he's patting on your back and tell everything's going to be okay, that don't mean it's going to be okay. That means he wants to get you somewhere, right? You don't know. You just have to let fate take its course.
Yeah, and having been given, he and I shared experience, we were given a hit to do for the mob, and I incorporated him into it and dragged him in, and he was going to be my trigger man. And what happens if they decide not to?
Yeah.
Your old man, what if he pulls this back and goes, now I just told Dutch. He knows all about it. I like him, but now he knows all about my plan.
Exactly.
Now I got to go.
We had a guy like that.
Yeah.
Tough guy, But when it came to doing heavy work, and he was involved in being in the background, because that's how they slowly get you. Might be driving a clean car and just observing, maybe on a radio, and then work your way in. And he refused. And my dad says, I have the right to kill him now.
Yeah. Yep.
I says, and you're going to kill him over that? He says, I don't know. You know, he's a good earner. I might let it go a little bit.
Funny, and you don't know how they're thinking. You don't know where they're going. In the end, I wasn't doing the hit fast enough. What are you doing? Why isn't this guy dead?
Yeah.
I'm getting him. And I told him my whole plan. I'm using these bikers. I'm using the bikers for a reason, so it doesn't come back on my crew. And we're doing this, and this.
And the mob started doing that more. They started this
the
aligning with different people, different cultures.
The collections were being made by
mostly.
the OMGs. So it was familiar to them, right? And I only used what I saw as a kid in my neighborhood growing up. I knew my uncles, OMG guys, were used by mob guys and, for collecting. So I just went on but point is, when you're making this plan and he's not, listen, what's taking so long? Do I got to get it? He lived out here in Nevada. Do I got to get a plane? I'll get on a plane, break my parole, and fly there and kill him myself. Now I'm thinking, holy cow, clip us. And then at the end, the psychopath and sociopath, at the end, I'm like, well, just so you know, Dutch is never going to flip. He's never going to, God forbid something happens, he gets caught.
Yeah, you got to vouch for him, yeah.
And all of a sudden, he's like his best friend because he met him.
Yeah.
And he's like, well,
One
no,
time.
of course not. We're going to, what are you going to do? You're going to take care of him for life. He'll be inside. We'll pay him. What are you going to do? He's your friend. I'm not going to kill him. But we'll kill one of our own?
Yeah. Exactly. My dad was good at sit downs, and that's what he taught me. And that's he taught me. He says, Frank, he says, in a sit down, he says, I want to know what's the takeaway, what the guy wants. Right. He says, first of all, I always let him go first. He's because everybody wants to prove they're innocent, tell their stories. So I'd let him go. I'd sit, relax. I'd drink some water, and he was finally done, completely done. He says, I would twist everything he said around. And then he'd start defending himself. Who are you going to believe? The guy that's changing his story?
Right.
And he goes, I go in there. He goes, I'd lie through my teeth for the whole thing and win. And he wasn't scared.
Sounds like
because
the same
he
thing
knew
the
the
cops do.
outcome. Is you 90% chance you're going to wind up dead with the outcome, or you're going to lose something. He didn't care.
Wow.
He didn't care. He was very smart like that. Very smart.
Yeah.
So that's who I was dealing with, and it was hard. It was one of the hardest things I did was have to wear the wire against my dad. I constantly fought with myself. Am I doing the right thing? Should I wait till I get home? But what kept going over in my mind was he had a chance to kill me and he didn't. Now, had I read what I read recently before, it would have been 100%, hey, I don't care.
Right.
But he didn't kill me. He tried, but he didn't. So I didn't know if I can live with the fact of killing him.
Right.
Just to get him out of the way and leave me alone.
Right.
I figured I got to give him a chance. So my 8 months with him was maybe we can work on our relationship before I contacted the FBI. And, we don't need this life anymore. You can get out of it. I'm not in it. We have money. We have businesses. Let's be a family. We know how to protect ourselves. We don't need anybody to protect us.
Right.
But he didn't. He was
But
looking.
the stress and the love that you had and the emotional roller coaster that you were going through, because you really wanted to save it. You wanted to save your relationship with him. You wanted to save him, pull him out of the embers,
Then my hardest recording was the last day I was leaving. We didn't talk about nothing. We were just, he goes, I'm very proud of you. He says, I really got to know you. We got to work out a lot of differences. And I'm thinking, shit, man, you're going away forever. And, that moment that he's having, I had too. And I think, God, he could have probably been, naturally, if he was alive, we wouldn't be sitting here on a podcast. But, just the fact that there was so much we could have did for our family and
But
it
he
was
was
just
only
hard.
getting, he
It
was
was
only
hard.
getting what he needed.
Sure, it was very hard.
Sure it was. I was only in a short time, and the man that I reported to in a relationship and a bond that we built, I had that moment in his garage when I told him, this is it. I knew it was my last day and my last recording with him. I knew that the team was going to be crashing his door in the next morning, and I sat in his garage and he told me, this is good stuff. He gave me when you have an elder in Italian culture, or Irish culture, and they hit you back here, it's a sign of love. And he told me he loved me, and this is good. But he was getting what he wanted. He's going to get somebody killed. But then I thought about it, and I had that moment of, man, it's the last time I'm backing out my Cadillac out of his driveway, and he's telling me, take 2 bottles of water, be careful going home.
Yeah.
But,
it plays with your mind.
It does.
Yeah.
It really does. And I couldn't imagine it's your blood, your father. But
Did you ever talk to your dad again after he found out?
No, he actually put a hit out on me.
Yeah, I don't know if he ever reached out to you.
He
like it had to hurt him.
he tried to manipulate friends around me. He tried a lot of stuff.
Because you were back on the street and he was still in prison.
Yeah, he was still in
and
prison.
now everybody knows that you wore a wire.
Yeah, a huge mistake my dad made was before the wires came out, the indictments, my dad was with the boss that was going to be the boss coming out, locked up, and he said, this is my brother telling my son everything he shouldn't have told him. Because there was a lot of stuff I didn't know.
Right.
My dad was very military-like, need to know basis. We don't talk about it.
Right.
So it was very hard for me to get a lot of stuff out of him. I used the fact that, hey, I need to know what people are capable of. I need to watch on the street what's going on. You need, so we would get into that, a father-son reminiscing and teaching me. He told the bosses, he said, this is all my brother. And I told you guys, that's why I wanted my brother dead. I told you guys that. Well, when the tapes came out, he just lied to a boss through his teeth.
Yeah.
So they were mad at him. And for him to keep himself alive, what he did was he took a mob lawyer so that the lawyer can report to the boss everything that's going
Basically,
on.
the mob lawyer worked for the mob, right?
Yeah, he's working for the mob. He's reporting back
He
to
knew
the
he
boss.
wasn't going to get out anyway.
He thought he was. He thought he was.
Your dad
He was
thought he was
trying.
gonna get
Yeah, he's a master manipulator. See, what he didn't know about court was he thought that court is like a sit down. Like, so you're going to get your turn. You can say whatever you want. No, it's not like that.
I'll give you my pound of flesh, and then you let me go. Yeah.
And I worked with the government, and they told me, the prosecutors and the agents, they never had somebody work as hard and long on this as I did, because this was important to me.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, these guys sitting in these room, a lot of bosses. Okay, I know what they're all capable of. This is not a joke to me. I didn't put them in that room. Okay, they wouldn't touch my tapes. All the lawyers said, the defense said, don't go near those tapes. They're loaded. Because I knew how to insert stuff so that if you take one line, I'm going to read the 3 lines after, and you're in trouble.
You're done. Wow.
And
You're the only one that could have made a tape against your dad, basically, right?
yeah,
Anyone else would have given away indicators to him that would have shut him down.
yeah, I'm him.
Yeah.
And I still have
Exactly.
to deal with that every day.
Yeah.
I am him. Just because I changed my life doesn't mean it goes away.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
in me.
Did the other gangsters, the other guys, the other members of that family, once you got out, were they accepting of you? Like they knew, or were they kind of like, yeah, well, your dad's gone off the.
A lot of them were mad at my dad. A lot of them. Well, first of all, I'm one of them. I think like them, so I still always have to be careful, but there's not much left anymore. Most guys went legit, but I sent word out to people, hey, look, this is between me and my dad. As long as you don't get in the middle of it, your name ain't coming out of my mouth.
Right.
But you're not going to know till after trial. You're going to have to take my word for it. There's nothing you can do anyways.
Right.
So, a lot of them seen it. So a lot of them said, I disagree with what Frankie did.
Yeah.
A lot of guys called me Frankie, but I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. And, a lot of these guys, as long as I'm not hurting them in the pocket, I'm not taking their freedom away, they're not going to do anything. I'm not on a corner. I'm not challenging them.
Right.
I'm not sitting here saying the mob was a joke, a bunch of idiots. There were a lot of guys that lived the life the way it was supposed to be lived. Make your neighborhood better, make your family better, protect your family. They lived by that code. Unfortunately, my dad, his boss, this life changed them into sociopathic killers and criminally justifying hurting all these people all the time.
Right.
Or taking what they wanted. So I still, I live my life, not in fear. I'm always aware of my surroundings as much as I can be. But I never thought I was going to make it past 30 years old. So I'm 63 now, going on 64. My kids are in a good place. My kids are my life. Those are the ones I answer to. The effects on the family is a lot of effects too. That'd probably be another show.
Sure.
Right.
But, this trial was a huge trial. It was very hard on me walking in that courtroom, seeing my dad. I hadn't seen him for 6 years. Do you know I wanted to run over there and hug him? I wanted to say, Dad, I love you. Enough of this now.
Yeah.
I never stopped loving my dad. I just hated his ways.
I believe that.
And his controlling ways in court even came out, right?
Yeah.
Even when he's sitting in a room and mouthing people, was he talking to people or was he threatening, intimidating, or?
So the government asked me, how do we get your dad mad? You know how to get him mad, and that's his weakness. So I told there was a young prosecutor that he didn't know. We knew the other ones. He respected them. Just kind of like you says, once he met Dutch, he doesn't know him, but it's like, oh. So I said, you got to walk up to my dad, stand in front of him, point in his face, and raise your voice and call him like a scumbag or something like that. And he did it, and he got my dad. Was so mad, and the jurors seen that, and he mouthed to them, you're a dead man.
Right.
So my dad and all the other bosses got life, and my dad went into a special lockdown because of the hit and the threat to the prosecutor. Do you know my dad was trying to get my brother Kurt involved? Now, my dad manipulated my brother Kurt. He knew my brother Kurt feared him, and he took advantage of his kids when they feared him. He had a guy put fake dynamite on my brother's porch. Now, my brother moved out of the neighborhood up north where there's no Italians, no gangsters, top schools. And my brother calls me in the day of jury deliberations, and I'm in Tucson. I go, what's going on? He goes, I think I got a problem here. I go, what? He goes, it looks like there's some dynamite in a bag on my doorstep. I go, Kurt, where are you at? He says, well, I'm looking through the window. I go, would you please get out of the house? Is anybody else home? He goes, hey, can you just have the FBI come and take this away right away? I don't want my neighbors or nobody to know. I go, Kurt, I don't think it works like that. I called. Needless to say, they evacuated half the town.
Oh, yeah.
On every
Bomb
news.
squads.
They put my brother in a safe house with his wife and kids for a week. My brother's got nothing to do with this. And all my dad tried to do was scare my brother because he told my brother he wanted him to get on the stand and lie.
Right.
Get on the stand and lie about your brother and uncle. The mob wants to kill you. He told my brother the mob wants to kill you. He goes, why? I'm not involved in this. He says, yeah, but because of your brother, that's how they work. But I could save you.
Yeah.
That's how far my dad
He
would
needed
go.
to scare him, though, to get him to do it, right?
He scared the crap out of him.
The level of manipulation is just incredible.
And he would use it on his family.
Yeah. Even on his
He was fast with his hands. One time, you go out to a payphone. We had pagers back then. We didn't have the convenience of phones, but it might have not been a good thing anyways. But so my daughter's sick, and I'm home watching her because my wife's at work. And my dad's paging me, and I'm not getting back to him. And he's getting mad, so he comes to the house. He walks in the door steaming. Bam! He cracks me right in the head. My daughter's standing there. He looks down. He goes, laugh like it's a joke. I go, and I'm just thinking, he goes, why didn't you call me? I go, my daughter's home sick. I got to take care of her. I'm not going to bring her out to call you. You could come to the house.
Right.
You're my father. And that's how bad it got.
Yeah.
And we got in businesses together, and he would always stiff me, my uncle, and my brother.
Really?
Yeah.
Because he felt, dude, that's mine. What's yours is mine, and I deserve it, and I should take it. You get what I give you.
Even one better. He'd say it's all going to be yours one day.
Oh.
That whole thing, it's all going to be yours.
I'm going to take this now.
I'll
'cause
hold
this
on
is all
to it.
gonna
It's
be
safer
paid.
than the bank.
Yeah.
Dad, I need $5,000 of my money. For what? I'm a grown man with a family. I got to ask you and tell you what I need the money for, and then you're going to give me a yes or no.
Right.
And that's how bad it got. It really, really ripped our family apart. And it was about survival for me. Some people say, oh, you did the right thing. You're a good guy. Look, it wasn't about right and wrong. It was about protecting myself, my family, my brothers, my mother.
Yeah.
I watched guys kill themselves because my dad had so much control over them.
Right.
Oh, just commit suicide.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just drove him crazy.
Yeah. And I someone had to stand up to him.
Yeah.
And I didn't know too many people that would.
Wow. And so many, I guess, the homicides that was solved, and even Spilotro and his brother, right?
Yes.
That became part of the case too.
That was huge. That was so my dad, so that was in early 1986 in the winter. My uncle gets a call. My dad's down in Florida, and my uncle's got to go somewhere, and he's told that, hey, you're going to meet me later. I have some explosives for you and an Uzi, and you got to hop on the train and go out to Vegas. And they don't tell him why. So where's your brother? And he says, well, I'm trying to get a hold of him. He wasn't feeling good. He might be down in Florida, because you're supposed to ask permission to go away, and my dad didn't. So my uncle gets all this stuff, gets on a train, goes out there, meets with the guy.
I think it's dynamite and an Uzi.
Yeah. and they got a hit team out there.
Yeah.
And he finds out that this hit team is going to kill Tony Spilotro. And the reasons why were, first of all, Tony was dealing with drugs. He was also doing drugs. Found out a lot more later. And he had slept with Lefty Rosenthal's wife, and he was killing a lot of people, burying them in the desert without permission. And basically, they were blaming him for everything that went on in Vegas. And they wanted him dead. But in reality, when later on, when my dad and my uncle were talking about it with me, Joey Ayupa wanted him dead because Tony was a natural leader. He was violent, and he had the backing to take over the mob while these guys were going to do that long stint in Kansas City. So that's why they wanted him dead. Well, Tony was very smart, and they would follow him, but it was hard because the FBI was watching Tony too. So if the FBI or Tony, who had counter surveillance, sees this hit team, they're in trouble.
Right.
So they're laying back. They're having a hard time following him. The only place they can find that they might have a chance to get him is by his lawyer, Oscar.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they had gotten permission that if they have to get him by Oscar's offices, that if he's there, he's collateral damage. Yeah, I mean, that's how bad
They're
they
willing
wanted
to kill
him.
Oscar too.
Yeah, and then Frankie Swice, who was unbelievable hitman in Chicago, crazy German-Irish, he wants to gun Tony down coming down the federal courthouse steps with that Uzi. Here. He goes, and then we'll just hop in the car and drive out, Nick. He's telling my uncle. But they're thinking, Ocean's 11, you can't get out of Vegas that easy. They closed those three ways out, right? So they decided against it. They brought it back to Chicago, and they came up with a new plan. And the plan was to bring Tony back. Now, Tony had a very important role in the mob. He was very high-ranking, but he never had the captain's title. They just didn't give him out easy, okay? But he was running Vegas. That was an important job. He was well respected by all the bosses. So they figured they were going to bring him in and make a making ceremony where they're going to make him a capo. And to make it believable, his brother Michael, who really shouldn't have been involved in anything or got killed, they're going to make him made too, but they're going to kill them both.
Oh, wow.
When the Spilotros were friends of ours, we were close with the family. When my dad and uncle are sitting there, we're like, what? Michael? Basically, in reality, my dad says, years ago, Tony got a slap on the hand. He might have got shelved for a while, but, he's not sitting in trial in Kansas City. These other guys are. Somebody has got to be blamed more than that. They weren't killing all those other guys. In fact, my dad told me, he says, Frankie, he goes, I'm going to give you a list of names. Don't write them down. Remember in your head, all these guys already. What would stop them from coming after me and your uncle? Out of paranoia or anything. Things are getting crazy. Government's getting stronger. Guys are starting to kill each other. If they kill us, eventually they will. I want you to go after each one of these guys and get a vengeance. I'm sitting there saying, man, I'm not going to be lasting too long. I'm just 26 years old. I'm not making it till 30. This is crazy. My uncle was involved. My dad wasn't because he was recovering from a tumor at the time. But so they brought him to a house in Bensonville where they were taking him down into the basement and they were going to have this making ceremony. When they got down the stairs, my uncle grabbed Michael's legs and another guy strangled him. Tony was screaming out, you guys are going to get in trouble. And they said, wait, hold on. Let me say an act of contrition, final prayer. And I go, Unc, did they let him say it? He goes, I didn't hear anything, but I was concerned about my own life. Because when they were in Vegas, the leader of the crew, a guy, John Ficarata, big stoop, close friend of my dad and my uncle, killed a lot of people, a true old-time gangster. They're sending out hundreds of thousands of dollars and nobody knows where it went. He's gambling it all. He's having an affair with his deceased brother's wife out there, brings her around and introduces her to everybody. Oh, wow. And he didn't get the job done.
Yeah.
So when they were going down in the basement that day, when my uncle got there before the brothers got there, one of the bosses walks up to him and Big Stoop and says, hey, you guys should have did this in Vegas or we wouldn't be here right now. My uncle gets a chill thinking, oh no, they're going to kill us.
Yeah.
What do they think? I had something to do with the money with John? Because the other thing John did when they were gambling one time, my uncle was there, he made him sign the IRS gambling slip. My dad was like, why did you sign it? He goes, Frank, I'm a soldier. That's my boss. That puts you in Vegas. They wound up killing another guy out here while they were out here in Phoenix. At that point, John Ficarata goes in the bathroom in the basement for about 5-10 minutes. The brothers ain't there yet. He comes out of the bathroom. He's white as a ghost, sweat all over. And the same boss that yelled at him nudges my uncle and says, hey, Nick, look at John's Vegas tan. It don't look so good right now. Maybe he should have thought about that before he did everything he did in Vegas and spent our money. Right. So my uncle felt a little better, but he thought the whole time, once the brothers are dead, he's going to wind up in the pile too. Yeah. That's how bad it was getting. Mm-hmm. My dad and my uncle decided all this stuff that was going on in Vegas with John, they weren't going to say anything. They were going to hold on to it in case they needed that information later. John Ficarata goes to a guy that pays us $500 a week. He's been paying for years, right? One of those lifers. Yeah. And he puts a gun to the guy's head and says, quit paying the Calabreses, pay me. The guy gets scared, so he stops paying my dad. My dad goes and sees him, puts a knife to his neck.
Yeah.
And tells him, what's going on? Why aren't you paying now? The guy gets scared. He goes, look, I just want to pay my money every week. And he tells him what's going on. My dad says, you're okay. Don't worry about it. He goes and tells his boss, who talks to the other bosses, they said they want John dead. Frank, you and Nick got the job. My dad comes back to me and my uncle. He's concerned because John Ficarata is so street smart. He knows he fell out of favor, and he carries a gun all the time. This is why I stopped up. I said, Dad. He goes, what? I go, let me kill John. What? I go, this is about family. It's not about mob stuff. This is about family, what he did to us. I go, hear me out. Let John think that you want him to be my mentor, that I'm going with him and Uncle Nicky. If you're not there, his guard's down. And my dad thought about it. We talked for a while. He knew I was ready, and this was going to be my first hit that I was going to do for the family. We came up with this plan where I was going to be in the back passenger seat. My uncle was going to be in the front. It was a ruse to put dynamite by a dentist's office. And he was going to have that in the bag. I was going to have a gun. My uncle was going to have a gun. We had John's gun in the glove compartment so he can see it in his revolver so he could see the bullets. But what he doesn't know is we filed down the firing pin.
Some Uncle Bang.
Yeah. And then he was going to drive. And then when my uncle got there, he was going to radio to my dad and another guy driving around in carts to let them know, hey, we're at the dock. We're going to unload. Everything's ready. And then I was going to reach over John's right shoulder and say, John, I think I see somebody in the gang. While he's looking, I'm going to pull out the gun. I'm going to shoot him in the back of the head. My uncle's going to shoot him. We're going to be picked up and go. 2 weeks before we were supposed to do this, my uncle says, let me do this alone. Tells my dad. He goes, why? He goes, I'll put Frankie's gun on me as a backup. John's guard will be down. He trusts me if I'm alone with him. I know that it's a two-man job. I know my dad knows it's a two-man job. And I'm thinking my uncle's just trying to show off to my dad, and I'm mad. Yeah. So when we get alone, I go, what are you doing? Don't you think I'm ready? Don't you think I'm capable? He says, you're more than ready, more than capable. He laughed it off. He goes, but you're out. I go, why? He goes, you see how your dad's changing? He goes, you're not crossing this line. So my uncle actually, he didn't follow the directions or what we practiced. I'm out, but I'm still part of this. I'm outside the area. I got a pager. I know what I have to do if it doesn't go right. He was supposed to now take the bag, get out of the car, and shoot back into the car. He's supposed to call and let him know. Well, he forgot to call. He pulls out the gun in the car and starts fighting with John and shooting at John. Well, he holds his arm up. He shoots through his arm and hits John.
Through his own arm.
Then he's fighting. John fights with the gun. The bullets fall out. And John gets out of the car, starts running through this gangway for a bingo hall on Belmont Avenue at 6 o'clock at night. In that bingo hall is my grandmother.
Oh, no.
Playing bingo. Jesus. Normally. My dad gave her $100 the night before and said, stay home and make homemade meatballs. My uncle chases him with my gun and catches him and assassinates him right behind the head, right by the entrance, and then takes off.
In a bingo hall?
Yeah. Then takes off, throws the gun in the sewer. My dad and the other guy are driving around. They hear sirens. They don't know what to do. We had to take my uncle to a veterinarian to tend to his wound.
Oh, for his bullet hole in his arm?
And during the Ficarado hit, the bloody glove that they found that was dropped at the scene, that played a huge...
Yeah, so my uncle had gloves on for the hit, and when he got shot in the arm, when he was going down the alley, he went into a gangway and used a hose to rinse it off, and when he went to take the gloves off and put it in his back pocket, he accidentally dropped one of the gloves, which was in an evidence locker that came back with his DNA, because at the time they weren't doing DNA. Did it later. And then the gun he dropped in a sewer, which I had to go back a couple days later and get out so we can dispose of it properly. That was a big turning point in my life, but I didn't realize it till years later. That he really saved my life. He really did not want me to get into this. He goes, Frank, you're always hustling. You make a lot of money legit. All your friends are making good money. Stay away from this. How many times did you hear that? How many times you guys are if anybody was, stay away from this.
He was your guardian angel.
Yeah, he was.
Really was. Wow.
Just you three boys?
Yeah, with the three boys. My middle brother, Kurt, was in the union with my uncle. Kurt, I always said my brother Kurt was could be a politician. Everybody loved him. He was a good businessman in commodities. But my dad used that fear and manipulated my brother too. Now, my youngest brother, Nicky, he's 11 years younger than me. My dad just never brought him in or anything. He was a professional bartender. He was going to school. I actually gave my brother money so that he can go away to college in Florida. My dad didn't want us to go away to college because he felt he couldn't control us. And my brother was a straight-A student in school, and I wanted to try to get him as far away.
Yeah.
And my dad found out I gave him money, and he took it from him and wouldn't let him go to college. So he was never involved. But he has a lot of questions, a lot of...
Is he upset with you?
He is and isn't. So my brothers and myself and my mother passed on now, we've learned to disagree on some things. So everybody was so manipulated by my dad that my mom, when she first found out, she said, Frankie, why'd you do this? He would have came home and everything would have been okay. Everybody thought that everything was going to be okay. That's like a codependent. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
no, he's not going to change. I was with him. He's not going to change. Mm-hmm. Well, when she finally heard the murders and the way my dad murdered people. My dad's signature trait to kill somebody was with a rope and a knife. He loved hands-on. He'd strangle you, and then once you were dead, he'd cut your throat from ear to ear.
Right.
He was very violent, and it's almost like he enjoyed it at some point.
Sounds brutal.
If he was going to use a gun, he loved the snub nose up close, and he loved pump shotguns.
Really?
So my brother Nicky was he was never really involved, and we have a nice relationship. I have a off and on relationship with my brother Kurt because my brother Kurt, he's having a problem letting go with the fact that I'm the good son. I never did nothing to Dad. Why did he treat me worse than you? You know, and he's the middle. And so, you know, and now lately he's starting to blame me for everything. A lot of things that I see with people in the life that have turned, okay, is they try to justify why they turned. And, well, I'm not a snitch because... You know, well, no, if you're on a 302 in my life, that was taught is you cooperated,
right.
You know, and so you have to, you know, look, you're a rat, you're a snitch, you're a turncoat, whatever it is, you know, that's what I'm labeled, and I have to live with it. I live my life. I'm not in hiding. I wasn't jammed up to do it. So I look at it as a cooperating witness, but I look at it as a war. I did what I had to do. But I will never say, well, I'm not a snitch because. And my brother's doing that right now, and he cooperated a little bit to help out too. And I don't know why he's doing all this now, other than the fact that he's trying to find his way in life still. And my dad really did a number on him, really did a number on him. And his kids, he's very close with his kids. He's a great father. But I just feel so bad, everything my dad's put my brother Kurt through.
Almost sounds like your dad let each of you see exactly what he wanted you to see. You know what I mean? He treated Kirk different than you and Nick different than you because he wanted control over you and he wanted them to feel different things, you know? Like, he is a master manipulator.
He was, and he always had to be mad at somebody, and always tried to keep everybody separated. So what we do now is, even though we might disagree on certain things, we're still family.
Yeah.
So we still hug and kiss each other at the end, you know, and it's important. It's important because it's okay to have different views.
But out of all the boys, and again, I'm speaking from my life experience, right? Not to sit here and badmouth our dads, but, you know, you were, and again, I'm not saying it's not an insult, but you were the most like your dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your dad, when he looked at you, because I know the experience,
Yeah.
you know, and I know that feeling, and I know that feeling of, you know, when he looks at you and sees you, he wants to stamp you out. He wants to beat him out of you because you're going to eventually rise up and you're going to challenge him. There's nobody else.
Right.
My old man used to say to him, "You want a shot at the title?" He would never treat my other siblings that way, you know.
You know,
I think you were a sacrificial lamb in a way. I think you
Yeah.
I truly believe you loved your dad.
I did.
I think
no matter
you
what my
wanted
dad did,
to
I wouldn't raise
embrace
my
him. You
hands.
wanted him.
What do they call it? Unconditional
I
love.
don't think you had any choice.
I
he
just
removed all choice.
I felt that at some point he's going to get it. Mm-hmm. At some point he's going to get it. You know, I listen to my kids now. Okay, I don't think I know it all. I listen to my kids for a lot of reasons. My kids are smart. They're good kids, and I listen to them like I wanted my dad to listen to me. Mm-hmm. Okay, because anything they're telling me, it's because of love. It's because we're family. Maybe it's not what I want to hear at times, but I still need to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's important. And my dad, you know, one day, so I had invested in a hair salon. A buddy of mine had, you know, just to hang out, one of many investments. And so there were some girls in the salon getting their hair done. They said, "Hey, I think I seen your buddy on the street. There was some little short old Italian guy screaming at him like this, pointing at him. Had to be his father. Otherwise, I think he would have laid him out, right?" And that, you know, there I am right on the street going, okay, you know, just standing there,
Doing what you're
you know,
told.
get the crack in the face. Okay,
Yeah.
get it over with.
Yeah.
Do you know, he was so fast with his hands always hitting me that one time he grounded me when I was in school, and I hated it. I hated it. He grounded me for a week. I hated it.
You're ready to just get hit, huh?
Yeah.
It's shorter.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you've broken the cycle. You know that, right,
I did.
Frank? Like,
I did break the cycle, and I'm happy about that I
Yeah.
broke the cycle. And the thing that I do the most is I have to practice what I preach every day. Okay? I have to process sometimes. Because I see things. It's in me. Oh, one more time.
Right.
Give it to my kids. You're going to try to find some reason to do it.
Right.
And I
You
have
still
to step
fight the
back.
urge to hustle?
Yeah. But I use it in a positive
Yeah.
way. Now, I love to hustle,
Yeah.
You know, for a little bit, I was driving Uber on my free time because I love to hustle. Right after COVID, there was no drivers.
Yeah.
And I get in that car, and you know what? I get timed out at 12 hours. And my adrenaline's going, and you got to sit 6 hours. And I'm thinking, how can I get around this 12 hours?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I want to go. So that was to me a hustle.
Yeah.
I'm constantly hustling, but in a good way now.
I get it, right? Because it's the interaction with people. It's not a hustle to steal. It's not a hustle to. We always see the angle. We always see a quicker, easier way to make money because that's the street in us, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's what we're raised to do. But it's so funny because you know my story. When I got relocated, I became my wife convinced me because I had no job when I got relocated, and I became an Uber driver. And I'm not going to rob people, but
No.
the brain and you know the world inside the life, it gets you. And I picked up 2 fares, and I went out. I got my, applied for the Uber thing, and I went out and drove and picked up 2 clients or whatever they are, fares. I came back like an hour and a half later. My wife goes, "What are you doing? Aren't you going to go out and pick up some more?" No. I did the math. I had a big SUV. Of course, it cost me more to drive them to it. It was easy, and I said that it was easy for me to pull over and rob my fares than it was to give them a ride to where they were going. Not that I would rob them, but the brain is a...
Exactly. And you know what? My first night driving Uber, these guys were showing me $1,200-$1,400 on a weekend, right?
Yeah.
I'm driving for 3 hours. I go, this ain't adding up.
Right.
So I was like, there's got to be an angle. So then I started looking into it. I found times, I found areas, and then I got into the angle, and then I found surges and all this other stuff. So I used everything I learned in the hustle and hustled it.
Right.
And then when everybody started driving, I started seeing that it's not the same anymore. But it's the hustle's always in you. It's just drawing that line now.
And the trauma and the life, like I do with my kids, and I still get my angers and the bouts of, my old man will come out in me, or it comes out, and sometimes you just have to be aware of it before it bubbles up.
I try to avoid it, so I won't do anything that I feel is going to bring it out.
Yeah.
A job or anything. If I feel that it's going to bring that anger and that frustration and make me start thinking not right, I won't get to that place. I'll remove myself right away.
Right.
I've learned to over the years. I went to counseling for a while. And I went with my ex-wife. It was great. The counselor says you don't have to come no more. I'm like, why? He goes, you're going to be fine. I go,
No.
The one time I'm in the middle of it, the hour's up. And I go, and he goes, well, your time's up. And I'm reaching in my pocket for more. He goes, what? I go, we got to keep going.
I'll pay for some more time. I'll pay for some more time.
He goes, it's not how it works.
Yeah.
And I looked at my ex-wife like, what do you mean that's not how it works? I'm on a roll here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Even with the drugs, when I came out, the guy told me, stop coming. For the first year I was out, I had the P test. You get a color, and I had a P test. And for me, it was a hustle. I'm going to have a perfect score. I'm going to do everything I needed to do.
Right.
It got to the point where I was driving a tractor trailer for a while to make some money and hustle. My color comes up, and I got a chance to work overtime as a Teamster, $40, $50 an hour. So I called my my probation officer. What he knew what I was, doing, and I says, "Will that hurt me?" He says, "It won't hurt you, but it'll be on your record." Right. I passed. I did not want to have that one on my record, and he gave me permission. And sometimes I had the tractor trailer. So what I would do for my lunch break is I drive right away, block the street, run in, and the guys were so helpful and that they'd throw me the cup. We go right away, and they get me out of there in 2 minutes.
Right.
And then I hear these other guys saying they're trying to set you up. Find out the guy peed dirty 16 times before they violated, and I just look. I'm like, what's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I was on a mission. I'm on a mission to this day. Like I said, it's been since 1997 that I've been clean. I always will be. It's actually one of the most embarrassing parts of my life. For me. But I have to be open about it. I have to be public about it.
Yeah, but sharing your experiences and having people hear what you can turn your life around, right? And don't get drawn into the life, and don't get suckered into it. It's a fool's game in a way.
Don't miss it just a little bit.
Well, that's
It's so fun, you know what I mean? Like,
you miss the high of the street because it is a high. It's an addiction.
Yeah.
Sure, you miss it, but just like anything else. Look, when I partied with cocaine,
Gotta
it was
smarten
fun,
up about it. Yeah.
You didn't have to wait in line. You go in a nightclub, you got a VIP table, you got 10 girls there, you got a pocket full of money. That's all fun. Do I miss that part? A little bit.
Yeah.
But what about the other side?
Yeah, exactly.
20 years in prison.
Yeah. But, you got to be real here, too, because, I mean, when I wrote my book and when I tell my story, I did a lot of bad things.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not a victim here.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm not sitting here saying, oh, everybody was bad and I was the perfect one.
After all was said and done, did you have an opportunity to reconnect with your Uncle Nick?
I did. I reconnected with him once or twice. So when my uncle was cooperating, the case agent that was both of our handlers, he talked to my uncle. My uncle said, "Tell my nephew that I understand what he did. You know, he saved all our lives." Well, and then I want to see him when I get home. And at sentencing, my uncle got 7 years, another 7 years, which for what he did, he got the most time ever. And he started getting mad at me, and he would tell the agent, and the agent said, "Look, Nick, if Frankie didn't do what he did, you guys would all be dead right now." Mm-hmm. So when we got out, we worked on our relationship a little. A couple times we got together for a few minutes, but nothing really in depth. He was mad at life for everything that happened, and he carried a heavy heart for all the stuff he did. Right. He couldn't sleep at night a lot. His family stood by his side. His big thing was his family, what he did to his family. And, you know, he bought into what I bought into. Mm-hmm. And then looking back on it, you're like, oh my God, this is not what he thought it was going to be. And then he passed on recently.
He did. Dutch and I, we really want to thank you for coming on, Frank. I mean, it's to tell your story, I want to do a mini series on this. There's just so much more we haven't even touched on, and so much of your life that we really appreciate you coming and sharing it. I hope it gives people an insight into your story, answer some of the questions on why. You know, the biggest question is, why would a guy do this to his father? You know, people that don't know you, and research, read the book, find out more about you.
Yeah, the book Operation Family Secrets. Yeah. They have it at the museum here. I will be doing a residency at the museum. Also, the government signed off on that. You know, Random House, when I had it, Random House is like, "Do you have it? Did you sign off?" I says, "We sent it to the government." "Oh no, why did you do that?" I says, "Hold on." While I'm talking to them, I get an email and it says that the government signed off on it. I go, "Oh, they signed off on it. Good job, Frank."
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's a great read, but to have you here sharing your experiences with us, we appreciate it. And hopefully you take the time to come back and
definitely.
And there's tons more we can share.
So much.
But thanks for being here.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
For behind-the-scenes photos, merchandise, and exclusive content, visit InsideTheLife.org. Rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get podcasts.